You're listening to Cultureful. I'm your host, Jess Lynn. This is part 2 of my conversation with Tonisha. If you haven't listened to part 1, I suggest you navigate back to the feed and listen to part 1 first. In this episode, we get an overview of Tonisha's service, consider the realities of military life, and hear Tonisha's advice to young people considering that path. I hope you enjoy, and I'm wishing you and yours happy holidays. This conversation has been really organic, and we're kind of flowing here and there. And at the same time, I want some, the key facts. What were the years that you served?
I went into the military February 14th, 2001.
Wow.
I laugh because
Valentine's Day.
Yes. And I actually was dating someone and so when I went to MEPS, like you go to MEPS and you take the ASVAB, it's like a whole day there of like testing and strength testing and visual, like eye stuff, air stuff, like all kinds of stuff. And so at the end, you go and you're like, okay. And they're like, okay, you're good. When do you want to go? And I'm like, oh, whatever. I actually had to wait. So I graduated at 17. I had to wait to turn 18 to go and do all that. So I already was like waiting, I don't know how many months. Because in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm going to graduate. I'm going to go in right away. So when I go in there, they're like, oh, we have this date. I'm like, okay, cool. Which was still like some months out. But I was like, cool, I'm going to take the first, whatever. So I get home and my friend calls and is like, how'd it go? And I was like, oh, yeah, I leave this date. And she was like, you know what day that is, right? And I was like, no, like not even. And I was like, oh. And I was like, well, it's too late now. Like, can't change it. So I feel like I'll always remember that date for a couple of reasons. February 13, 2001. And then I got out. My official exit date was January something of 2010. But I stopped working, let me see, November, I think, of 2009. I saved up enough leave and stuff to leave over 30 days before.
So that was over 8 years of service. And is that what you had in mind when you joined? Or did you think you were going to be in until you retired?
Yeah. No, it was not what I had in mind. So it was 8 years, 10 months, and 23 days. And that's not what my initial plan was. Like, oh, I'm going to go do the initial contract 4 years. In my mind, it's like, oh, I'm going to go to this 4, and then I'm going to go to college, and then I'm going to go do whatever. And so that's not what happened. My first enlistment, which was the first 4 year that I signed up for, went through basic Joe stuff. I got stationed at Nellis, which is on the edge of Las Vegas. And so as an 18-year-old, that's kind of like, oh, what am I supposed to do? Like, so, because, 21. So you're not 21 yet. So I'm like, okay, cool. Funny enough, those of us who weren't 21, we found some like cool stuff to do. Like when the award shows would happen, we'd go sit down at MGM and just like star spot and like be like, hey, over here, this person over here. Like, so we entertained ourselves in like a good way, not just like the getting into trouble. So I was stationed at Nellis, and then in that first enlistment, I got sent to Iraq because, as you know, that was 2000. Yeah, February 2001. So fast forward to, I think I got to my base literally right before September 11th. And my birthday is September 15th. So that was a fun birthday that year. And so the military changed from what it was to what it went into when that happened. So my intro into getting into the military was like, I'll say fast heightened. So we get to base, that occurs. The base like goes into this super crazy lockdown mode. And then from there they adjusted to how they did things. So a lot of what I experienced was different than even the person that was like 6 months before me. just because of how 9/11 happened and what happened. The March 19th, 2003, I got sent to go to Iraq the first time. So we go from Nellis. We kind of staged in Dover, Delaware for about a week. We were waiting for Bush to do his speech or whatever. And literally, I remember being like, at this time, I think 20. I remember being like, I'm either going to die or I'm gonna go or going back home because we're like, it was all dependent on what he said in his speech. So when he declared that it was official conflict, we pretty much like, okay, we're going,
Hmm.
we're gonna continue to head to Iraq, whatever. So I was a Mark 19 gunner, which is one of the reasons I got selected. So Mark 19 is a automatic grenade launcher, and it weighs 75 pounds by itself without being loaded. And so it's one that you either be on a tripod on the ground with or mounted on a Humvee. So, and that's the thing about the Air Force cops. We have it's like you have double jobs, right? So it's a military, so of course um, you can get sent to fight or do whatever. But the cops are almost like a guaranteed to go, which I didn't really know when I went in until you start going through your training. And so being certified on a heavy weapon like that for any type of like wartime things, you're probably guaranteed you're probably gonna go. And how I got certified on it was when I first came into the military. I think I was fortunate enough to have a group of people over me, so like my supervisor and then my two step up, which would have been her supervisor. I feel like I was fortunate they were both black, and so when I came in,
Hmm.
they were like, "Oh, we're gonna set you up for success," type thing. So it's like there's all these little things in the military that a lot of people don't talk about, like stuff to accomplish to get rank or to get whatever. And the Air Force is a thing that's called BTZ, so below the zone. When you go from one stripe to another, when you get from two, which is Airman First Class, so A1C, Airman First Class, to what the next stripe up, which is three stripes, which is Senior Airman. There's a thing called BTC, so below the zone. So you can, if you get chosen, you can put that stripe on early. Um, and so they did a lot of stuff to set me up to go for that. So one of those was like being qualified on stuff that other people aren't qualified on. So that's how I got chosen
Hmm.
to be qualified on the Mark 18. And for our base, there's only two bases at the time that taught that weapon. So there was Nellis, which is where I was, and then there was a base in Texas. So out of the whole Air Force, there's only two bases that teach that weapon. So it was one of those where it's like,
Wow.
this definitely isn't something everybody, all cops are going to be privy to. But with that, and then 9/11 happened. So when I got put on the team for that, which is a 3-man team, and we got sent with two 3-man teams, and then we connected with a couple of reserve teams that were 50 cal gunners, which is a 50 caliber huge rifle type. But it's also large. It's large, so it's another one that's like you're going to be on a Humvee or mounted on a tripod on the ground. Let me see. That was what 2003. So went to Iraq the first time, which was bizarre, crazy. I mean, you have a 20-year-old. I think the oldest person that we left my base with, I think the oldest guy on the team that we left with was 24. So when you
Wow.
think about it now, it's like you all left it like we're not teenagers, but you're just out of that teenage phase, right?
Yeah. You're early and mid 20s. You're super young. I mean, it's just so much responsibility, so much. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like the person that was over us, right? It was like 24, and we're all. I think I was the youngest so it ranged from like 20 to 24 in the age of the team of the people that I live with. That kind of gives you
Wow.
a sense of
Hmm.
like, yeah, like where we're at the time. And then the reserve team we hooked up with, because they're a reserve, I think there's another guy that was a little older. They were a little older than us, which was nice to actually connect with them through the traveling and stuff to get to where we had to go because we had someone else who was a little more, I'll say, like better head on their shoulders to kind of guide us. So, '03, I wrecked the first time, came back towards the end of the year, and I got sent. We got sent north to Kirkuk, so we got sent north. That's a whole nother like story of that experience, Northern Iraq. Let me see. We came back towards the end of the year, and then when I came back, I think I started working in our weapons armory for the cops. So we basically would arm up the cops in the morning, and then once they were done with their shift, like take their weapons and stuff. Which by far is probably it was one of the jobs I liked a lot. I had a really good supervisor that was over us. His name was Sergeant Bako. I'll never forget him. His name is Sergeant Bako. He's from New York, so he has like New York accent, but it's just really chill and cool. And like, yeah, and everyone I worked with, he did a good job of hiring people that our personalities like went well together. I don't think we never had any problems. We never had, and you generally were working the shifts by yourself. So we're in 12-hour shifts. So they have a schedule called Panama. So you work three, then you'll be off for two, and then you'll work two and be off for three. So it's like you end up getting every other weekend off. And so we had what's called extended Panama. So we would do 4-3-3-4. And so you had the same weekend off, but it was kind of nice because you would end up having like 4 days off sometimes. So we were like, I don't care. Like you're like, so.
So then bring us up till 2009.
So let me see. So I worked the armory, and then I left that base in. Oh, I spent like a month in Germany in between, like on the way to go to Iraq too. In between there, like a month in Germany, stopped in Romania, which actually was really cool. I have a picture. A friend actually recently reconnected with her from the military. She sent it to me. We're the only two girls that. Also, there was only two girls out of all the what 4 or 8 people that we left with from my base. There was like two girls, and so I reconnected with her recently. She sent me a snapshot of the picture where I'm standing in the Black Sea, but it was like this rock we found, and so the water like just went over the rock, so it looks like I'm standing on top of the water. It's kind of cool. Um, so Romania, and then different places like visited in between there, which was really cool. So kind of fed into the wanting to travel, which was another reason I actually went to the military because I was thinking I was gonna like be able to like change bases every once a year or so, and I would get traveling in. But going back and forth to Iraq, I got traveling into other places. So let's see. Then I left that base in 2000. Actually, I was supposed to get stationed in England, and I had the orders and everything. And then next thing I know, like with 2 days before I got on the plane, I got told don't get on the plane, and then they issued me new orders to go to Vandenberg, which is Central Coast, California. So right, kind of like right above Santa Barbara. So, which essentially you're like, oh, that's awesome, but it's like, no, I wanted to go to England, and I would have been doing
Yeah.
postal duty as a special duty. And the funny part, no one knew why my orders got changed. Even the girl that changed them. So the original lady that I was working with for like leaving and stuff, she was pregnant, and so she went into labor and was like having her baby, and so they told someone else who was lower ranking to take over or whatever. So I'm asking her questions, and she's like, I don't know, because she's lower ranking, so she like doesn't want to ask questions, and I'm just like, okay. So I get sent to Vandenberg. I get there, they're not expecting me at all. They're like, oh, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. So like, no, please tell me. Mind you, my all my stuff. I was living on a suitcase, so all my stuff got sent to England. It was on the way to England, and I got sent to
Oh no.
California. So I was without my stuff for, let me see, because I want to say August of 2005 until sometime in 2006. It was almost a year. Like my stuff was gone. And so, right about the time
Wow.
that, yeah, it's crazy because after so long, they have to pay you for it because they pretty much lost it. Um, and because no one knew where it was. And they're like, "Oh, wait, someone found it." And I'm like, "Oh, of course." It'd been sitting on the flight line that whole time, just in a pallet. Like, and some cop
Oh my
was like, "Why
gosh.
is this here? It's been here for months." And then they went and like ran the name and realized like, "Oh, this person was supposed to be here, but they didn't." So there's so much stuff that like happened in my, yeah. So that was, let me see, 2000. Let's see, so 2006 to 2007. I went to Iraq the second time, and I was gone for a year. That time,
Hmm.
totally different operation this time. It's so so the first time I was under Iraqi freedom. The second time I think was enduring freedom. Their campaigns, as they call them. That the second time I was doing detainee operations, so totally different type of job. And then the third time I left was '08, and I came back in '09, so a little before I got out. Um, and I that time I went to Kuwait. It's still during enduring freedom, and we were doing some like back end work on the kind of like the military side of the airport, if that makes sense. So the Kuwaiti airport has the regular, and then there's like a backside that the military um, operates and does some stuff on. So I want to. I don't remember. I came back and I only had like a few months before I was supposed to get out. So that was kind of a thing too, where when I got sent, because we are like the group I got sent with the second time from Vandenberg, where we were and what we were doing, we're supposed to be back for at least a year before we got sent back out. And mind you, there's plenty of people that could go, but for some reason, one of the head guys, they picked me and a few other people that I had went to Iraq the second time with to leave again. And the supply guy who kind of is over it, he came and told me, he's like, he pulled us like three or four of us aside. And he was like, I tried to tell them, but they're like, officially, you'll be back for a year while you're in training for this, so you can go again. And he's like, I tried to tell them a couple of you guys are about to get out, but they were like, whatever. So I was like, oh, whatever, whatever. So the year, so 2009, I come back, and I think I have like maybe 6 months before I get out. I don't even know. It wasn't even a full 6 months, but
I feel like we're just like scratching the surface of everything, and there's just so much. I know there's just like so much in those, so many years of experiences and feelings and so many different jobs. And oh my gosh. So, how did you decide you wanted to leave?
one, I so I had the first enlistment. The reason I enlisted for the second time was because I had got the orders to go to England, and so um, I got the orders to go to England, and I was going to be doing a special duty, postal duty, which is considered a special duty. And so I was super excited, and I debated for I don't know how long to even sign the orders to go, because if not, I would have got out like what 4 years prior. And so I waited until
Mm.
the it was such a debate in me, because I was like, do I go to England, which is where I've been trying to go like my whole career, and get over on that side, or do I get out and just go from there? And I debated for so long that I waited until literally the last 5 minutes before the place that I needed to take them closed. I literally, me and my friend walked in and they locked the door behind us. And she was like, dang. I was like, oh, dang. Like, if we would have been late, if there were traffic, like, I wouldn't have made it to turn these orders in. And so, them switching my orders for no reason,
That's why it was such a big deal.
yeah. Even till to this day, there's only like kind of a concept that someone had that I was like, well, that would make sense, because I didn't get in trouble. Like, if you're someone that got in trouble, they can easily take your orders or do whatever. I didn't get in trouble. I There was no reason. Even when I got to the base, like I said, they weren't expecting me at Vandenberg, which is why even my stuff went to England, because one person, their thought process was that because Vandenberg got they're a space command base, so
Hmm.
they do launches and stuff, and so they got a new air missile defense system, which required them to have more people. And someone was like, oh, since you had already checked out of your base, but you hadn't physically left yet, it's just easier to switch you over instead of giving someone else new orders and whatever. And I was like, that's messed up and that's shady. but it's the military, so you sign your life away. They can literally do what they want. So that being said, and I couldn't get out of the orders because I didn't have a closet. I didn't know. So when you're what they call first term airman, like on your first enlistment, there's not a lot of stuff that people don't tell you. Like you find out later. So later, come to find out, I could have had them put in the orders. Like if for some reason these orders get canceled, so does my reenlistment, because I had to reenlist to get those orders because I was like 6 months shy. So the orders were for 2 years, I think, and I was like 6 months shy of fulfilling that 2 years by the time I would have got there. So I had to re-enlist to get the extra time, and I couldn't. I already had been on like a 6 month extension. So, and as a first term, you can't extend. You can only extend so much. So I couldn't be like, oh, I just need another 6 months.
So you had to re-up a whole 4 years.
Yeah, there's so many like ways they kind of get you and stuff. And so, but me not knowing that I could have put in there like if these orders get canceled, so does that enlistment. I didn't know that. So when the orders got canceled, I got sent over there. There's literally like nothing I could do. So I just had to like do the time. So when it was time for me to get out, I was like, I'm out.
You had been ready. You had been ready to get out.
And I was also like upset about it. Like I have to do I reenlisted for one thing and you put me somewhere else. And it wasn't like I said, it wasn't like I got in trouble. My whole career I never got in trouble. I actually got awards for things. Things that like I wasn't trying but just doing my job and excelling, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's some recognition that I received. So it's like for someone like that to then be told like you're going somewhere you've been trying your whole life, your whole career to get there, and then all of a sudden, oops, no, just kidding, you're going over here. Like it just didn't sit right with me, and I was like, I'm done. I'm over it. Like I don't want to do it anymore.
It's like hardest for me to wrap my head around for people that enlist is that you do have to do what people tell you to do and where they tell you to go, where they tell you to go. And, it's like letting other people decide such major things for you that like, I don't know. I just can't wrap my head around that. So like your second 4 years not being what you thought you signed up for, like, oh man, yeah, I can feel that being like really difficult.
Yeah, it definitely was. And something you just said is kind of how I felt, where it was like, I pretty much was like, I'm ready to like be over my own life now, right? I think coming out of high school, going straight into the military for me wasn't that big of a deal because I came from a family where there's discipline and there's strictness. So it's like, it wasn't that big of a deal. Like, my mom tells me what to do, right? My mom have rules and guidelines and stuff. So coming straight out of being a teenager living with your parents, going into the military, I was like, it's kind of the same thing, right? And then, but growing up in there and getting to a certain point where you're becoming an adult and realizing like, okay, I'm ready to like make my own decisions for certain things, and then going through that experience that I previously just explained, like it literally just made me be like, okay, I'm ready to like be over my own life now. Like I want to have choices that I want to make, and not have to do something because someone who doesn't have my best interests at hand tells me to do, right? Versus like your parents, generally, you consider having your best interests at hand with the decisions they're making. But the military is going to do what's either right for them, or you sometimes, unfortunately, have people in positions to do things that they just do because whatever drives them to do them. And it's not always on a positive.
Oh man. Okay. So, wow. I really want to know, as like my last question for you for this interview, about the military. What did you tell your niece in terms of like, what do you think are the positives? And also, what do you think are the negatives of joining the Army that young people, that you want young people to consider so then they can be fully informed in making their very important decision whether or not to enlist?
Yeah. We actually we had set a coffee date, and she canceled on me because she's very active. Like she's cheers, she plays basketball. She's so we have to reset up the date. But some of the things I was, definitely wanted to make sure she was aware of is like it's not all it's not all glitter, right? It's there are the some of the things you have to go through, and I plan to, inform her, not tell her like all the nitty gritty stories about being deployed, but it's a very different life over there. It's a very different life. And if you go to some of the spaces I went to, which are called Bear Base, it's almost like camping, but it doesn't end. um, and
Oh, wow.
in some instances, it can be worse, right? Because you also have to think you're not in a safe space. So on top of
Hmm.
your lifestyle of living being completely different than what you're used to, right? All the privileges and stuff you have living over here, you don't have that over there. Then you also have to worry about your safety on a very heightened, different level. So it's not like, oh, I'm walking from school, I just got to be aware, when I get to my house that I'm good. It's you have to be aware at all times. You have to be conscious of everything that's going on in every moment. In the event, especially seeing how like certain things are going, the whole, Ukraine and all the other stuff. But given our history of America, it seems about like every 4 years we're in something, which I was aware of when I went in because I told myself, which was like, oh, I'll do 4 years and then I'll get out. Right. And I was like, if something happens, it should be at the tail end of when I'm in. That's not what happened. It happened like literally right when I got in. I was like, wait, this is not this is not how I planned this. Like this is not what's supposed to happen. So letting her know just that portion by itself of what you're really getting into. And then also the fact that like you have to do what other people tell you. Like the younger generations these days are very different. I would say very different. Even I watch how my sister maneuvers with raising them in discipline and certain things, and I'm just like, and her and I've talked. I'm like, these kids are different. She's like, yes, they're different, right? So it's like I don't know. We just operate different. We just making sure she has awareness of like this is not like you can't go and then be like, "Oh, I don't like this, cancel it, right? There's no cancel culture in the military. like um
You do what they say.
Yeah, exactly. I know there's a lot of them that are used to that. Like, I don't like something, I quit. Like, this is not, you can't quit like that. And if you do, it's gonna use, there's people that try to quit and they pretty much draw that out so long that you might as well have just did your time and got out,
Hmm.
But then also there's the good things where it's like, for me, the nice thing was even though, because my plan was to be in 4 years, like I said, go to different bases in different places, different countries, and being able to like see the world and then experience the cultures through the food and things like that. The good thing is like if you get to travel, you get to see new stuff. You get to make friends from different places and see different lands and things like that. And my niece is somewhat like me, where she does like to like experience different things. So like I said, she's way more active than I was. Like high school, I played volleyball and stuff like that. But she's like, this girl is. I'm like, when do you sleep? Like she's always something. No, like, and I'm
Hmm.
like, she's busy. And I'm like, for how old you are, I'm like, you're like adult busy. Where you right now, you might want to like enjoy your time.
Besides the travel, what was the other biggest positive?
I would say, I mean, I did grow up in there. As like I said, I went in at 18, right, and got out at what 26 or something like that. I think maybe having access to people from different places was a positive. Um, I got to see how different people lived, how different people grew up, having the conversations and meeting people without even traveling. Right, I got to meet people from different cultures and different backgrounds and connecting and figuring out and learning how to network. Right, at a young age,
Hmm.
and like I was saying, like especially with the cops, like people look at us a certain way, but I developed a knack for like kind of dealing with people in a way where I know they gravitate towards me. So it's like we would need to get something, and I'm like, oh, I know someone from that group or whatever, and I'd be like, let me see what I can do, or whatever.
It's a complicated social structure, right? So you end up building a lot of soft skills if you're going to navigate that successfully, right?
Yes, I completely agree. So I would say that was a positive. Just yeah, just learning the differences, right? With humans, and like you said, being able to grow. Like we say, it takes a village. So even though I was 18, like I said, being in a very diverse environment of like age, culture, everything, right? So it's like a mini world that you kind of get to like experience. So then it's like when you get out, when you deal with the real world, you kind of already, well, I did at least. I'll say that's what I picked up from it, because I would say not everyone picks up from it, right? Everything, everyone's experience is different because it's depending on how, what they take from it, right? So you can go through the same thing as someone, but you can pick your, however you gravitate towards things, you will pull different things from that experience. So for me, that I
Right.
would say that's what I pulled from that experience, yeah. But I definitely say I was also was in with some people that were very reluctant to be open to certain things during the experience. So
It sounded like you were a lot more open. Yeah, it's like today, this conversation, I feel so privileged and lucky and grateful to have this conversation with you because you have been super open. And that is hard. I'm just really grateful that you shared all of these things that you shared and their personal experiences and personal stories. So, thank you for being so open.
well, thank you for having me. Thank you for listening. I would say thank you for
Of course.
every time I've interacted with you, though, making me feel like comfortable. If you know it or not, like you have a presence that like makes me comfortable. So I think it makes it easier as
Thank
well.
you. And yeah, you're very easy for me to be around, which is why we've been here for a few hours.
I know, right? Longer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's just like, oh, getting some storytelling. So before we go, yeah, are you working on any projects now? Is there anything you want to share with our listeners if they want to check out what you're doing now, support you? Like, what's going on with Tonisha now that you want to share? Like separate from, what we've been talking about your military experience.
Yeah.
Tonisha in late 2024. It's December 13th right now that we're recording. It's also
I yes.
not PS. Parentheses, it's a Friday the 13th, which is why we were like, we're gonna not be superstitious. We're gonna go ahead and record. And also, we have been kicked off by the
Multiple
internet and
times.
other technological things for like a few times. But hopefully, the editing is so smooth that you will not have noticed until right now because I'm telling you. Yeah. Anything else you want to share or plug? Like, please do.
If people would like to find me or interact with me, you can find me on Instagram at the dot plant nanny, or the dot plant nanny. And briefly, people ask me how I got into plants. It's a full story for another time, but I basically kind of grew up with them. And coming out of Iraq looking for solace, I kind of slingshot it into plants and then turned to a whole thing. Fast forward, at some point in time, I got a horticulture degree and started teaching plant care and doing workshops for plants and how they kind of coordinate with health, right? Emotionally and mentally, how they are medicine for us. So that's currently what I'm doing. And then there were a bunch of crazy madness that happened this year and different things, unexpected things. I don't know if I even told you this. I also decided that I am going to go back to school and get certified for esthetician and go into medical esthetician.
Oh, right. Yeah. You mentioned this briefly. Uh huh.
Yeah, it's just I found it's another place I can like help people. And when I say medical esthetician, I want to get within to like a dermatologist office and focus on like facial skin and things like that. And also, I am planning on moving out of the country. And so I feel like that's a job that I can take with me. I do have a place because I know people are like, oh, out of the country, you're just going. But I do have a place in mind that I want to go. And so my birthday, September, decided I'll take a trip there to see and check it out and see how I want to
Is it Korea?
No.
Something skincare.
Actually, I haven't want no that I know it's funny. I haven't wanted to go to Korea because, I mean, their skincare is just like by far surpasses, I think, everyone. To be honest with you, and I'm actually a little ecstatic because now lately we've been getting more of options of the Korean skincare in the states when before there was like minimal things. And I've always been into skincare even when I was younger, which is funny. I rarely talked about it, but I've always been into it. So, but I do want to visit Korea, and so I can like actually dive into that a little more.
Me too. I always really want to visit South Korea. I love the food. And apparently I look South Korean. So there's that. Um, but this reminds me, I wanted to plug that there are many reasons to travel, many ways to travel, and people, this is just like sidebar from Jess, that if you're young and you're thinking about joining the military because you want to travel, there's a lot of other ways to travel, such as the Peace Corps, teaching English abroad, um, studying abroad, working abroad, a lot of ways. If you want to join the military for other reasons, more power to you. I just wanted to plug that there's like so many ways to travel. Yeah. Okay. End of plug.
I was gonna say I'm gonna tack onto that plug. I agree that yeah, check out every source if you want to travel. Yeah, and if you do want to join the military, by all means, go ahead and do it. Someone has to continue to fight, but just know what you're getting into.
Yeah. Oh, and then last one I just thought of being au pair is another way to travel. Anyway, so many ways to travel though. Woofing. Okay, I can go on. Oh, I just remembered one question that I really wanted to ask you that I forgot to ask. Okay, I'm going to PS put it in right now. What does Tonisha mean and or what is it? What's the name Tonisha from? Do you know?
Yes, I do know. I don't know the meaning. In my mind, we'll just say it means uh, amazing eccentric person. like, but
Yes, that tracks. Uh-huh.
my name came about. So my mother's name is Felicia. My father's name is Tony, and I have an older brother named Tony. And so my dad was gonna name me Tony, but he figured it'd be too many Tonys. So clearly, someone's obsessed with their name, and so
Uh-huh.
he put together Tony and Felicia, and so Tonisha.
Ah,
Yeah. So
fun, creative name.
sidebar,
Yeah.
but I still get called Tony sometimes. Also, like
I think the projects that you're working on and that are on your horizon right now are just really beautiful. And I'm curious to hear eventually, where you do end up, yeah, out of the US again. So yeah, keep me posted.
I definitely will. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, this is so lovely.
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you like this podcast, this is a small budding program, so remember to follow us and share with your networks to help us grow. We're also on Instagram at @thecultureful, where we look forward to your messages and ideas for future episodes. This episode was produced and edited by me, with assistant editing by Ruben Yana Ruben. I'm Jess Lynn. See you soon.